Hello and welcome to Stylish Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Hannah Taylor. Hannah is an experiential designer from Brighouse in West Yorkshire, and we actually met at Wilson's Republic. And I was there because of Katie, and I think you were there because of the bubbles.
Yeah.
And we saw the designer and the artist as well, the sculptor. He was really good as well.
Yeah.
Those sheep were incredible.
Yeah, such a cool project.
Yeah, I didn't actually see them in real life because I don't think I was in Yorkshire at that point, but they looked insane.
I only knew about them because of Katie posting about it with a picture with one.
Yeah, they looked huge. Like the one that was actually in the uni for that talk, it was massive.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the one that was on the main square by the train station. That looked insane.
Yeah, it looked ginormous.
Yeah.
They were made out of all sorts of different materials for the listeners. We were not just talking about random like sheep that were just plunked there.
Yeah,
cool. So yeah, it was so nice to be introduced to you at Wilson's Republic as well. I feel like I wanted to chat to like everybody there, but you don't get quite as much time as what you think to have a little chat with everyone.
Yeah. And I was late, so I didn't get to do the networking bit beforehand. Like, I just literally walked in, grabbed a drink, and sat down. So yeah, we just chatted on the break, didn't we? When I came and said hi to Katie. So yeah, it's lovely to have, that to have blossomed into something. So well worth.
Yeah. It's good. I think that network is so good because there's so many creative people that kind of go under the radar when you're not in a big city. You kind of go under a radar and just kind of potter about, and you kind of lose that community.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know I explained to you a little bit and we'll go into it in more detail, but I think sometimes if you question if you are creative or not, or where you're at on your creative journey, it's very easy to go insular. And for me, joining the creative bubbles through Wilson's Republic has kind of been my step back into it and reminding myself, I did a creative degree. I went to an art school. It just seemed a long time ago, and lots has happened since then. And just taking me back through all of that has been nice to reconnect.
Yeah. So, did you go to uni and study design at uni?
Yeah, so I went to Manchester School of Art, which is technically Manchester Metropolitan, and I studied interior design there. So did my 3-year degree there, and it was fab. It was a bit more like, I don't know, it's not quite interior architecture, but it wasn't what people think of interior design. Everybody thought I went and learned how to design homes. So anytime you say, oh, interior design, oh my God, you can come do my house. And I was like, I never studied anything to do with any homes. So, but yeah, it was a really, a great time in Manchester.
Yeah, I love Manchester as a city. I think it's great. And so did you do an art college? I think you said to me you did Batley School of Art as well.
Yeah.
Was that in between high school and uni?
Yeah. So I went to a grammar school, then I went to Huddersfield New College, studied art and dance, history and English there. And then when I was looking at going to university, so I was either going to go down the dance route or I was going to go down interior design. They were kind of my two options. I went to an open day for a dance school and quite quickly decided I wanted to keep it as a hobby and not pursue that as a career because of the pressure and the commitment to it, and I just didn't want to take away from the love of dancing. So yeah, went down the interior design route, and it was one of the open days. I can't remember which university it was. One of the students actually said to me, have you looked into doing a foundation diploma in art and design? And I was like, oh no, not really heard of that. Hadn't ever been advised that at college or anything. And they were like, honestly, it will be the best thing you ever do, because it'll bridge the gap between the structure that you're kind of under at school and college, and it'll allow you to be the creative person that you want to be, and it'll teach you to think outside of the box. And it'll make you have an advantage basically when you come to university. So that's exactly what I did. And it genuinely was the best thing that I ever did.
This is a bit of a side story, but I actually got kicked out of a foundation course for talking too much.
Oh dear. Oh, not creating, just talking. Well,
just talking.
Ideas come from chatting.
And look at me now. Who could have known nearly 20 years later that I'd be doing a podcast where I'm talking?
But yeah, I mean, because I went to a grammar school, it wasn't really advised for me to kind of, they didn't really want me to go down the creative kind of route, which is why I left the school and didn't do sixth form there, because I was like, that's not what I want to do. Went off to New College and did art there. And again, was just like pigeonholed into like, this is what you've got to do to basically tick the boxes. Like my exam piece was a painting. And like, there's nothing against painting. It's just not me. It's not my thing. And I don't know how I ended up doing that when earlier in the year, my project was like, I want to project stuff onto like buildings. And I wanted to make an impact in spaces, and they were like, I think they just didn't know how they would mark that. Like how would that go against the things that they've got to mark? So I just suddenly ended up painting a ballerina. That's what I did in my final project, and I got graded a C because I wasn't great at painting. Like it wasn't my thing, and I did go on to do the foundation diploma and came out with a distinction because they allowed me to do what I wanted to do, and I created this room and did this bonkers thing all about obsession, and all the research into it was like really detailed because I was fascinated by installation art, and they just allowed me to do that. So,
and I think that's it, like you need that space as a creative to sit and think and then bounce ideas off in order to get the best out of your creative mind. Because if you're penned in, this is something I really hate, and it's probably why I work for myself, is that when I feel penned in, I get really grumpy, I get really like depressed because I don't have space to be and explore my own ideas and explore like I get lots of inspiration from lots of different places. So it's like drawing it in from yourself. Yet when you're like, and you've got to come and do a 1-to-1 because it's March, and then you've got to do another one in August, and then you've got to do this, and you've got to fit in these boxes. Like, I don't believe creatives fit in any boxes. I think we make our own.
Yeah. And I do think like when I went on to do my degree for interior design, it was very self-directed course. So we did have time with tutors, and we did have, we actually had like one lecture a week, I think it probably was. And it actually wasn't just for interior design. It was for like a whole host of the design courses. So there was graphic design, fashion design, like in this one lecture. So it was very generic. And most of it, was just us doing our own thing, which probably wasn't the best thing in some ways for me because, at university I then spent a lot of time. So I joined the dance society. So that was my outlet there. And, I spent a lot of time going out, as most people do, and then spending like, staying up till stupid o'clock doing my work. Like my housemates were like, why are you up at like 3 a.m? It's like drawing on like tracing paper, doing this, like repeating these like floor plans. And for me, it was just the time that I could like have the quietness and the headspace to do it right up till deadline. But whereas previous, for the months and months and months ahead, I'd have just been going out till 3 a.m. and then I'd pack it all in just before deadline. That's just how I worked.
I feel like a lot of people who went to uni did that as well.
Yeah.
And I think like I remember visiting my sister when she was at uni, and she was like, I'm studying, like I've got to study. And I'd caught her maybe like the weekend before she was like I'm not going out for like 3 months, I have to study.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a very common story, I think, across the board.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, do you still dance?
I do. I've reconnected with it now. So yeah, I grew up doing it, then went to uni, I was on the committee and absolutely loved it. But then in my, post university, I then didn't really know where to go on with it beyond that. And because I went travelling straight after uni, and then I got stuck in hospitality, I kind of couldn't continue it. And so it was probably in the last like 3 years. I was like, right, I want to go back dancing. I don't want to go do street dance. I don't want to do like those kind of things. I'd looked at like ballroom. I was like, you've got to find a partner, and then I went to a burlesque show, and at the Peace Hall in Halifax, and I was just like so inspired by like these women who were just like all different shapes and sizes, like totally embracing their bodies. Like it was so empowering to be sat in the audience. And then found a local teacher that teaches in Leeds, did like an intro course, and it just helped me with my confidence so much. So I'd stopped drinking about like a year or so before that. And going to that and reconnecting with dance and just embracing my body amongst like a whole host of different people was just amazing. And I've actually since done 2 shows. So I've performed on stage and, we're in a group. So I haven't done a solo yet. That's my next challenge. But it's been amazing to do that as an adult. It's been very fun.
That sounds incredible. Like, to find a crew of women who are all empowered by dance and don't feel, I guess sometimes you feel like I've sometimes felt ashamed of my own body and stuff, from like media pressures and everything else. So to hear you talk about them, I just sat here with a grin on my face because I was like, this sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned your sobriety as well. So can I ask what kicked that off?
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned, I worked in hospitality from like the age of 14 to, alongside studying. It was great while I was traveling to kind of dip in and out of jobs. But then when I came back from traveling, which I'd not planned to do, so I'd moved to Australia with the plan to live out there after uni, and some like personal circumstances brought me back home, and I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? But I got stuck in a job that I ended up the live-in manager of. So like my relationship with alcohol had gone from that like binge drinking, social, fun relationship that I'd had throughout like my 20s to, a coping mechanism for the long hours, for the stress, I didn't drive at the time, and the pub was like not completely remote, but it was quite far out of a lot of things. So my whole life was just in this bubble. And I ended up leaving that job with like no job to go to back in sort of like 2018 because I was just my mental health was just a mess. I'd gone through a breakup and I just knew I needed to get out. And it was kind of like that year following that I then realised how entwined alcohol was in my life. So it was, it's so masked when you're in hospitality because you're in it, you're serving it, you're around it, people are drinking every day. So it wasn't I was getting drunk as such every day, but I was having a glass of wine when I finished work. And so then when I left and got into my like career in interior design, and I was finishing at like 5 o'clock, I was going home and opening a bottle of wine because that was just the habit. And so it'd gone from being at 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And so therefore I was drinking more and it was alone, and it just felt, I just kind of realised that I'd got into a bit of a darker place with it. Took me about a year though to probably realise that, and then I did Sober October because I just recognised how unhappy I was, and that maybe removing alcohol would allow me to like reach more of my potential. I would have more time, motivation, energy. I never planned to get as far as I am. I'm like 4.5 years in now. I was just like, oh, I need to cut it out so that I do stop those binge drinking habits or that drinking alone at home. And my life just got exponentially better. And so I just haven't looked back. So
that's insane. I think like Sober October has a lot to answer for people. I think a lot of people like do it and go, oh, my skin looks great, I feel better. You know, like it's much like you. I have had several years of binge drinking because of when I grew up. It was like girls can be like boys and down pints, and you know, and then I definitely had a couple of years off of drinking because I've had bad experiences. Then I've just stopped drinking entirely for a year, and then I've had like a little bit, and now I'm at an age where like I'd rather have a nice bottle of wine shared between me and my husband over like 2 nights than go out on the piss. But like it's funny how you don't realize how entwined it is, and how actually in a British culture it's very much like, are you going down the pub, are you having a pint, like do you want to meet for a pint? It's all about alcohol. So how did you find negating that when you were meeting up with friends and stuff? Did they understand, or were they like, oh, what do you mean you're not drinking?
To be honest, my friends were really supportive, but I think because I went in with the approach of like, I'm doing Sober October, like it maybe didn't seem as, and that is the reason that I did it at the time I did it, to be honest, so I got less questions. But I made a point of like, still invite me to everything. I'm still going to come to all the things that we've got going on. Like I went to an Oktoberfest event in that first month, was handed a stein as I walked in and just like passed it on to a friend, and then was clutching a pint of lemonade all night. And I think I just like threw myself into everything and learned to get through the like awkwardness or, you know, I was very lucky. No one really peer pressured me, to be honest, but I know that that's not the case for everybody. So, you know, I kind of become known as this, I'd always been this social butterfly. And then now I was like this sober butterfly. And, you know, my friends started actually to get to the point to be like, see that her over there on the dance floor? She's not even drunk. She's not had anything, and she's like having a great time. Like they were almost like proud of it.
Yeah,
I was like the token sober one, and then they all got like taxi home. You know, because I was the designated driver, but I had a lot of years of owing them when I hadn't been driving. So,
so you were like, get those vouchers in, guys.
Yeah, come on. Yeah,
I do think it's like it's more being more explored, isn't it? Sobriety, and I think, is it Dr. Alex, somebody, I can't remember his name. He's come out as sober. Was it this year he started it, or was it last year? I can't remember.
I think so. Yeah, you know, people being in the public eye that are talking about it more, like Scott Thomas, who's like one of the Thomas brothers. So his brothers are on like Corrie and Emmerdale, and he was on Love Island. So he did a year sobriety. He's very active on like social media, and he's been talking about it too. And he was like the typical party boy. It's actually quite funny. I used to go to his nights when I was a student. I've got a really old picture, of us, and it's just funny to think like how party girl I was, and now I'm sober. But you know, I stopped when it wasn't really talked about, to be totally honest. I was 27, it was 2019, it was before the pandemic, and I do think the pandemic has actually had a lot to answer for in good and bad ways. You know, people's relationship with alcohol changed because maybe they were a social drinker before, and then it crept into their home because they were now sat on Zoom, and they maybe never drank at home before. Then they started to realise, oh, I don't want to be like this, and started to become like what we say is sober curious, and, you know, explore it. And, you know, yeah, it's kind of, that's definitely grown in the last, you know, couple of years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the pandemic has an awful lot to answer for. And I think one of the times I stopped drinking was in the pandemic. I'll let you into a story. We did a cocktail masterclass over Zoom with my parents and my brother-in-law and my sister, and we were pouring out what we thought was like single measures, but it was actually like double. And I got so drunk at home that I threw up in my hands up the stairs and then threw it up the shower, and then got in bed and was like, I really want the dog. Got really upset. Got my husband to get the dog. So the dog came in the bed. And then I was like, he went out for what I now know was a cigarette. But at the time, I thought he was leaving me because I was that drunk. So I was cuddling the dog going like, oh, he's leaving us. And he was like, you're off your trolley here, love. And the next morning, I woke up with the most horrendous hangover. And he was like, we need to talk. That was ridiculous. And I had to clean the bathroom because there was sick everywhere. So then I stopped drinking for, I think it was 18 months actually from then. Because I just thought, this is too embarrassing. Like, had I been on a night out with my girlfriends and got that drunk, who knows what would have happened?
Yeah, and you know, I do think that people's just perceptions of getting into that state nowadays is so different. Like, you know, there was obviously the Ladette culture, and then there's been the like bottomless brunch. Like, I would go out for bottomless brunch at like probably, you know, 2:00 maybe, and I've come home at 4:00 in the morning. Like, that is ridiculous. And it's that kind of, it's glamorized, but really that's a drinking challenge. How much Prosecco can you drink in 90 minutes?
Yeah.
Like, and then you're going to go and spend more money because you've got no clue what you're doing after that.
Yeah.
So, and I think probably like the younger generation now, I think because social media is, you know, you could be on someone's live or someone's story and not really know, and it's being seen by hundreds of people before you even know about it in the morning. And yeah, thank God I wasn't really doing it when that was such a thing. It was when we had our own like personal cameras, and I mean, we'd still upload the whole album and they would be blurry and awful, but yeah, the live video stuff, I think that's probably something.
I hadn't even considered that was a thing. Like, in my mind, it was like not even a thing that people put their lives on when they're going out clubbing and stuff. Like, that seems really weird to me, but that's maybe because I'm from the generation that took out a really shit digital camera that had like one pixel on it. Yeah. And, you know, you uploaded everything and tagged everybody in the pictures and that was it. Like, but you maybe uploaded it 2 days later when you got home.
Yeah.
You know, from like a weekend away or whatever.
And your anxiety was kind of like...
Yeah. That's a really like, I'd never even thought of that. That's a like scary thought, actually.
Yeah. And I think like nowadays, like potential employers and all of that kind of stuff, like do check out like your online presence and things like, so who knows, like, yeah. So I'm glad I wasn't maybe from that kind of, you know, it wasn't really a thing when I was doing. Great.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad that like that Facebook is gone as well, because that would be shocking. I think there'd be some horrendous haircuts on there, let alone anything else. So this also then brings me on to your sober community events that you do.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about them?
Yeah, so off the back of like being kind of coined this sober butterfly, and I'd started going to a few like sober meetups. Like I went to one in Manchester, and it was just for women, and it was a whole range of like just women wanting to change their relationship with alcohol. So it wasn't like going to AA, it wasn't like sitting in a circle like saying your name, saying that you're an alcoholic, or like it was kind of that, I guess, more grey area is what a lot of people kind of class it as now. And it changed my life going to this one event that was in Manchester, and met this lady who lived close by to me in Leeds, and I just said like, why is there nothing like this like up north permanently? This girl had kind of come and just done it as a one-off. And then it kind of just then spiraled into me organising some local meetups, finding people that kind of lived local to Leeds. We did a coffee morning, we did brunch, we went to yoga class, and that was just before the pandemic. And then it just grew as from what we've just said, like when people's relationship was being a bit more assessed later into lockdown. So then I did what any millennial does. I created an Instagram page
Yes.
called Sober Butterfly Collective, and I had no plan of what that was going to be honest. I just needed a space where people could connect because the WhatsApp was getting a bit wild. And then it just kind of like grew from there because we continued to be in lockdown and we couldn't then meet in person. By the time we actually were able to in 2021, we did a meet up in Harrogate and had people travel from Essex, Newcastle, Birmingham, Manchester, like all to Harrogate. And I was like, oh God, what have I started?
Whoa, that's mad.
Yeah, and it's purely based on people just wanted that connection and just wanted to feel like seen and heard and valued and part of a community and like they belonged somewhere. And you know, with the peer support underlying all of that, of you know, championing each other to not drink. And then it's just kind of snowballed from there, really. So obviously, because so many people travel from different cities, I was like, I can't expect these people to always come to Yorkshire. So found a way to help them do them in their own area. So started something called Curious Coffee Catch-Ups, which was once a month on the same day, same time. We just meet in local independent cafes, and people can come along. There's, you know, they don't have to pay for it. We do put it on Eventbrite, but it's a free ticket. And they can just come along for a coffee, maybe a brunch if they want to, and have a chat with people that they, at the very least, know that they've got in common with, that they want to change their relationship with alcohol. But you often find they find so many other things in common, and they then go on to organise other meetups in the local area, and it is just totally evolved and it's incredible. I've been doing it for like 3.5 years now, and we're, you know, dotted all over the UK. And it's forged such good friendships that are just genuine and authentic and not built on alcohol. And empowers people to just tap into that true authentic self. And it's been a lot of fun in the process as well. We do lots of crazy things, proving that, you know, sobriety is not boring. It's far from it.
I think that's it as well, is like years ago you would get chastised for being boring, for not having a drink. I mean, like I've done a couple of weddings sober and it's the most hilarious thing because people get so pissed at weddings. And like someone, I think as well, I had like non-alcoholic Prosecco that might have been at that wedding as well. And it's like green tea, sparkling green tea, basically. And someone was like, how come you're not pissed? You've had 2 bottles of that. And I was like, it's non-alcoholic.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not pissed. And also I've been drinking so much water. How have you not noticed me go to the toilet every 10 minutes? Because you're dancing so much, aren't you? Just like sweating. But I think like it's better now. I think that I do feel like this alcohol-free options are better. I don't know if you find this or not.
Yeah, 100%. So off the back of starting Sober Butterfly Collective, I was then introduced to a guy called Andy Mee, who's the founder of the alcohol-free drinks company. So he's a wholesaler for lots of amazing independent brands. So not the stuff that you're going to find in the supermarket, like people that have started drinks like companies because like one lady started it because her dad had to stop drinking for medical reasons, but has drank beer his whole life. Like he didn't want to give that up. And so she started brewing at home, and then it's become like it was like the first UK alcohol-free like brewery, and it's been female founded. And it's, you know, there's the stories behind some of the brands that are fab. And we did a tasting night together. So I did the hospitality side and giving all the tasters out, and he did all the talking. And then we just said, like, maybe we're onto something here. Like, maybe there's a gap in the market here of getting these amazing products to people. So we started an events company. And yeah, that's been a lot of fun.
So what other events have you been putting on together?
So we named the company the Alcohol Free Events Company. So it's really simple, says where it doesn't tin. But quite quickly, we then wanted to find a name that appealed to obviously kind of consumers, and that's where we came up with Bold AF. So the idea behind that is because we don't want people to feel like it's stigmatized and they've got to be shy about asking for alcohol-free drinks, and that it's bold and not boring, and all of that. And it was all like stemmed from being quite like fun and creative. And actually, you know, we had Katie, who we've obviously already mentioned, because she's the queen of boldism. So when I had the idea of calling it Bold, and I'd started to tinker with like the design, I was like, we need to pass this on to the queen of boldism if we're going to call it this. So she helped with our branding. And yeah, we've done like an alcohol-free beer festival, and we did that at a brewery, and we called it Not a Piss Up in a Brewery.
That's cool.
It was very fun. There was like over 30 beers to try. There was like 7 on draft. The brands actually came and had representatives come and do talks about it. We did a pub quiz. We had music on. Like, it was like a beer festival. You got a branded glass, and you could go around and sample loads of stuff, make your notes on a sheet, and that was good. And then we did a party night as well, which was called Welcome to Wonderland. And the idea was we stripped a whole bar and put a full alcohol-free bar in, so that people could try different things like wines, beers, spirits. We actually even had shots. We had limoncello, a coffee limoncello. And then it kind of snowballed. The idea was like, okay, well, if we're going to call it Wonderland, let's say people could dress up, you know, as characters from Alice in Wonderland. Then we got a drag queen to host it, who was the Queen of Hearts, and it was boozeless bingo and play cards right. And we said we were going to have human chess, which made everybody intrigued as to what that was. And it was not what they all thought, and it was hilarious. We had them like have little headpieces that were all chess pieces, and just be a bit silly, and, you know, just remove the alcohol from the situation and feel like you're all on the same level. Like, you know, we made them do the conga as the first thing that they, you know, when we started the event. So it's just to kind of say you can let your hair down without having to blame alcohol.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've done some festivals, and yeah, who knows where it will go, but that's the exciting part about it, I think. Like, you know, as a creative person, having an events company that kind of goes, you can do what you want. Like, yeah, and that's kind of a bit, I suppose, where the experiential design has come from, because, well, we've not even touched on the whole interior design bit yet, but, you know, because I was an interior designer for a period of time, and then was made redundant after about 4 years of being an interior designer. I felt a lot of like grief for that identity of being. It was so easy when you tell somebody I'm an interior designer. They know instantly kind of what you do, and they're like, "Oh, that's interesting." And, you know, I was on this path to be creative director there, and I think I struggled for a while with not having that as part of, like, you know, my identity. And I was like, well, that is what I'm qualified in. I am a designer of spaces. Like, that's, you know, kind of what I did at uni. But I've got all this hospitality experience, and I'm now sober. So, like, it's kind of been fusing all of those things in together and going, you know, well, at the heart of it, it's creating experiences that make people feel something and make them feel connected to themselves, to others. You know, it's enhancing, like, event without alcohol. Like, you know, not relying on a substance to make it fun.
Yeah. I do think, like we said before, I do think the Brits have this thing where they need to get pissed to have fun. When actually, like I said to you before, I can go and be silly with my nephew and not give a shit if I'm in public and someone's seeing me like prance around or be an idiot.
Yeah.
So why don't I feel like I have the confidence to do that in a club, you know, or an event? And actually, it's so cool that you've like got a trio of things and kind of brought it together to build this events company. It's so cool.
Yeah. And, you know, and I kind of have just let opportunities come along in that time. And, you know, last year, I saw this DJ that was starting self-love raves for women, and she was doing them as alcohol free so that they make everybody on the same level. So she's not necessarily coming at it from like a sobriety or like recovery aspect. Like, it's just important to her that you're connecting with the music and that you're dancing because you're feeling something. And I was like a big advocate of what she was doing, got loads of the sober butterflies to let go. And then she like approached me and asked if I'd be her events manager. And she was like, I don't know if that's what you do. I don't know if you want to do this, but I just have this feeling that you need to be on my team. So started working with her, and it's been amazing because she already had her like concept, and you know, she'd got a really good reputation already. But like, I went in with my like kind of inquisitive like questionnaire type consultation stuff that I used to do from interior design to get to the heart of like, why are you doing this? Like, what is the feeling that you want to create? Got loads of answers, and then was like, right, okay, so how do we enhance like every single stage of when somebody buys a ticket from you to when they're leaving that event? And you know, we did one in February, and I mean, the venue was incredible. It was a monastery. It just was
cool,
fab. And you know, having a space that's so impressive for people to just walk into anyway sets the tone for it. But there was lots of like little things that we'd like done to improve, to make like the customer experience, which I'd obviously brought in from like my hospitality background, of making people feel like everything's being designed for you. Like, you are, you know, you are valued, you are seen. And that's just been so much fun because I'm so passionate about it on so many levels. Like, it's for women, it's making them feel like they can be safe and dance and not be ogled at, and but they can tap into their authentic selves. A lot of women have never been to a rave and not drank. Like, it's so alien to them, like to do that, to dance with no alcohol. So many women come alone, which, you know, we do certain things, like we create a WhatsApp group that's open 24 hours before, and everybody can like join and they can connect prior. So that's like come from me building a community and knowing how important that is. We have like a half an hour bit at the beginning where just solo ravers can arrive. So, you know, that daunting feeling of like walking into a space, like everybody in that space is the same. Everybody is on the same level. And then like group ravers can kind of come later when they've like come with their friends. And I mean, the feedback that we got from the one that we did in February is just out of this world. Like, it's so good, and I'm so excited to then use, you know, that to grow it as well. So yeah, again, that's kind of how I've created this experiential designer role, and it feels right to kind of say that, because I am a designer and I care about creating a customer experience and all of that, but actually I can do it in such a really creative way too. So it's been an interesting path to get to here.
Yeah, it's like I'm sat here like so intrigued, because it sounds like I'm not a raver by any means, probably more of a light metalhead, shall we say. And love me a bit of dad rock as well, which now I've found out Blink-182 is classed as dad rock, which I nearly cried. I was like, no, that's my teenage years. We are not in dad rock territory, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's
like, I was like, no, absolutely not. Bon Jovi, yeah, I can understand, but no, not Blink-182. But these sound incredible, these events that you're putting on. And the alcohol-free beer night sounds really good too, like the beer tasting. Because me and my husband have been to a couple of beer festivals, a couple of whiskey festivals and stuff like that. And I think the idea of going to an alcohol-free one is pretty exciting too, because you've still got to create a decent tasting drink, without the alcohol. That's an extra challenge.
Well, exactly. And I think, when we were talking about the idea, like, people go to these beer festivals, and after a few, you're not really that bothered about what the beer tastes like. Like, you're there to get your money's worth and try everything. Whereas ours was very much people judging the drinks. And we did it in January last year, and we did it in like the first week of January because we wanted people to come that actually were drinkers. So the idea of it was like, right, capture the people that are doing dry January, get people to come and try the stuff that's not on their supermarket shelves that is way better than the stuff that they've ever tried in their local pub. And maybe it will start to help people like cut down their drinking. Like, I'm not anti-alcohol, like, despite all the stuff that I do around it. Like, if you can handle what you do with alcohol, like, great, good for you. Like, but some people can. And so I just think that there should be choice. Like, I still love to go to a pub, still love to go to a bar, I still love to go to clubs, still love to go to raves. Like, that was just a big part of my life. And but I want to go and have an adult drink and still get the experience, because otherwise it does dampen my experience, unfortunately, if all I'm offered is Coke or lemonade, because I don't like Coke. Don't particularly like lemonade either. Don't want to drink a J2O. Like, why can't I have something that tastes nice, that's my kind of taste buds, the experience.
Yeah, and it's not 1998 where J2O has got glitter in it, and that's really exciting when you're 14.
Yeah, gosh, I remember going to my local cricket club to go and get a J2O.
Oh yes, girl.
Yeah, just that's what it reminds me of. So, like, I mean, when I used to drink, it took me a long time to drink gin, but when there was the gin boom, I would drink rhubarb gin with lemonade because I just wanted it sweet, basically. So hence why I don't want to drink lemonade now. And then I never liked tonic, but in 2019, bars really didn't stock very much at all. So I had to like train my taste buds to like elderflower tonic, because it felt like, well, it's a bit of something,
Yeah.
But now, like, there is, places are getting more on board with it, and understand that we don't all stop drinking because we don't want to spend money. Yeah, I'm probably not spending as much as I was, but like, I still will go to pubs and I still will spend my money. But if you don't cater for me, I'm taking all my friends that drink somewhere else.
Well, yeah, exactly. And also, like, down to maybe this is, for women, maybe, like, even if you're pregnant, you might still want a mocktail or, something other than soda and lime or lemonade or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. And I think there's a lot. I see even in the supermarket, there's loads of like spirit companies that are trying their hand at alcohol-free stuff. And, why not?
Yeah.
Like, the choices are there.
Yeah.
Can we delve into your interior design job as well? Because this intrigues me, because I do interior styling as well.
Yeah.
For photo studios. So obviously it's same, but very different, right? So are you doing it from like plans?
So my degree was probably better described as maybe like interior architecture. So a lot of stuff that we did, we were like given an existing like building. So we were in Manchester. So my first project was actually really cool. They took us on a tour of the underground tunnels in Manchester. Like, and then I can't remember what the brief was, but it was very open-ended, basically. And it was kind of to make you think, be a bit creative and think outside the box. So I created in this underground tunnel this mad experience that was basically like made from like glass and like mirrors. It was a 2 like floor maze that basically, so you'd think, oh yeah, I can get through there, and it'd be glass and you couldn't get through there. You'd climb a ladder and you think you could get up, but you couldn't. I can't remember all of like the reasoning where it all came from the brief, but and I had to make a model of that. I still actually got that up in the loft somewhere because I remember it being kind of pulled out as one of the really like, yeah, really interesting like things. And that's actually what I think my diploma helped me with, to just be like, so yeah, I think, you know, I did lots of research. I was like known as the queen of research at the School of Art. And so we kind of did stuff more like that. And then we were given other buildings in Manchester. Here's a brief. So I designed another one that was like, if anyone's ever been to Eureka in Halifax, which is a children's museum, there used to be this like sound garden, and you could like sit on mushrooms, it would make noises, and there's like big like flowers and all of that kind of thing. And that was my inspiration to make this thing, this old power plant that we'd been given. And I'd just done all sorts of research into crazy stuff about electricity, and somehow designed this huge garden that people would go and explore, basically. So yeah, my degree was probably not what people think that I did. So when you then come out into the world as an interior designer, I mean, I just hopped on a plane and went as far away as possible, because I was like, I don't want to go and work for these big corporate companies. Like, I'm off to Australia. See you later. And so when I came back and I was like, oh, I need to get into my creative career. Like, how do I go about it? And then obviously got stuck in hospitality for a while. But anyway, everybody just assumes like, oh, interior design. Oh, you can come design my house. That is literally what everyone would say to me. And I'd be like, got no clue. Don't know anything about curtains. Don't ask me, you know. But then when I left hospitality, bizarrely, I'd followed a lady who was a customer at the pub that I used to run, and she'd opened like an interior accessories shop in the Peace Hall, which I absolutely love. Like they spent a load of money on that while I was away, like traveling and at university. So I came back and it was just this like restored, beautiful building in little old Halifax. And and I went and worked there. So I'd seen when I left the pub that she put on Instagram she was looking for somebody part-time to just come and help her in the shop, because she'd started getting like clients. And I just messaged her on Instagram and was like, I don't think I've ever mentioned this in the pub when you've been there for your Sunday dinner, but I've got a degree in interior design. And she was like, what? So I went to her house, had a cup, went for a brew, and that was it. And I just, started working in the shop. And I think like, because she wasn't from an interior background, she was from like finance, working in the motor trade background. But we just had this really good connection, and within months we were doing like huge kind of like projects. We were doing homes because that was naturally just kind of where she'd kind of gone down the route of doing. So I was working in a retail shop, so got to do a bit of like, suggesting stuff for styling for people. We got an amazing client actually from the shop, because she came in, bought some stuff for her home, got chatting, and then said, oh, would you come and, look at our hallway? I need some help. And next thing you know, we've done her house, another house for her, and another project. So it was really like, it was a really good time. Like I loved that job. And actually for us, when we went into lockdown, we kind of rocketed, because obviously people weren't going on holidays and couldn't spend their money elsewhere. So I think actually we kind of grew a bit, if you can say it, like too quick. Like, it just, and because no one was really doing exactly kind of the design that we were doing, I had a certain like way that I'd like brought in to help with like consultations, and we just developed like our kind of way of doing things that just seemed to really work. And but then unfortunately, after about 4 years, decided to close the business, and I was made redundant, which, was actually really, really difficult. I'd kind of got, we'd had these conversations about like me being creative director, and I could see the path we were going down. Like, we were working very much more in the like luxury interior residential kind of side of things. It was a shock when it happened, and I think I had to kind of go through a bit of a grieving process, which is why I've then focused on other things in between that, because I was just like, didn't know who I was anymore, as if I wasn't that kind of, interior designer. So I did end up doing what people thought I did. Yeah.
I do think creatives go on like so many journeys, and we try lots of different things, and then we go, oh, I don't really like that. And then we kind of fall into something. And then often, this is just my way of thinking, but like the universe will go, no, I'm shutting that door. You've got another one coming open, and you're like, what the hell? And you're like scrambling around in the dark. And actually, out of that has come your like alcohol-free events, and your like sober butterfly collective, and everything else has come out of you being made redundant.
Yeah. Like, I did trust, weirdly, at the time. Like, it was a real mixture. Like, my friends genuinely thought, like, what's going to happen to her? Like, she's going to go, because my job was my life. It was all I talked about. I loved it, like, lived and breathed it. And I kind of maybe externally dealt with it very well. I don't know how, really, probably, internally how it was all going on. But I just had this feeling like, just trust, like, wherever it's going to end up, like, maybe that isn't the path you were meant to go down. Maybe that was someone else's dream and vision, and it was going the way that they wanted their business. And, on reflection, going down the luxury interior design route probably isn't really me now. Like, when I kind of have done a lot of work since going sober on like my values, and I've had lived experience of so my mum had a breakdown in 2016, and she was hospitalised for a while, and one of the things that she talked about when she was in there was the clutter at home. And so I literally rallied. It was like an episode of DIY SOS. I like wrote down all the things of like that were broken in the house, that needed replacing, that, if we painted this, if we did this, like, we didn't really have any money to do so, but drafted in my granddad, my uncle, my best friend, and we just did what we could, like. And I genuinely will never forget the day she came home and the door handle didn't like break off in her hand, and you've got to shove it back in, and like all the lights worked. And I mean, we did replace the carpet in the living room, which was like 20 years old, and bearing in mind she's had 3 kids and we've had a dog, and it needed replacing. And she sat on the carpet and like stroked it and cried. And that for me is the feeling I want to like bottle up and create with interior design, like that feeling and the impact that it can have on somebody. It doesn't have to be a £10,000 chandelier. It doesn't have to be, the most expensive paint, because yes, it's good quality, not going to argue with that, but the colour is the main thing, how it makes somebody feel. And so when I like reflect on being derailed from that kind of, interior design job, I was like, I am at peace with it now. I'm like, well, that was just not where I was meant to go. I'm now doing this experiential design stuff with events, and further down the line, I see it becoming, I'll do it with spaces more specifically, and probably people's homes, and helping them to, improve their mental health and create a sanctuary in some way. And it doesn't have to be all brand new. I've kind of made my own apartment my kind of test project, and I've been trying to get as much as I can from Facebook. Or charity shops, or I wouldn't say I'm an upcycler. I'll be honest. I need to find somebody that will help me do that bit. That like loves to sand stuff down and paint stuff. That's maybe not quite my thing, but I definitely want to get more into the interior design thing. But again, fuse it with the sobriety aspect, and how it can help people's mental health, and then maybe in turn, their drinking habits. Because I know when I wasn't in a good place with it, like, you can just ignore the chaos around you, like the things piling up, like the clothes everywhere and all the paperwork, and like just blinkers. Like, but it's so true that your environment has such an impact on, like, on the way you can think.
Yeah, I definitely can understand how your mum felt when her house felt too cluttered. And I think I ended up reading Marie Kondo's book. I can't remember what it's called now.
Thinking of Tidy.
Magic of Tidy. Yeah, that's it.
The Netflix program.
Yeah. And like, even now, this was before we moved up north, so maybe a decade ago, and I'm still tidying a bit like that. Everything's organized. I know you can see behind me, but it's like all craft stuff. It's all organized, and like, even to the point, like, inside the cupboards in the kitchen are organized. And my other half was like, why are you doing this, when we lived in our old house? And then when we came to move, you just got one big box and put all the boxes inside, done. And he went, oh my God, this is so quick. And I was like, yeah, because it's tidy, it's done. And also, like, maybe it's because I'm a visual person, but I can almost like see the clutter behind the doors, even though the doors aren't open. And I'm like, I can't have that in the house. Like, it needs to be tidy. And then, but on the flip side, there's like being too tidy and then not letting go. And there's some things that people really don't give a shit about. Like, my friends and my family don't care that I've not dusted the banisters for like 6 months. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, it's having that it almost frees you up if stuff's working, and like, there's nothing more frustrating than a bulb going or a door handle going, and every time you just think, oh, for fuck's sake, I need to sort that out. And it's like one thing on top of the other, and it'll be something then really tiny that can send you over the edge, but it's the build-up of everything below it, right? And it just, I can completely understand where your mum was coming from. And then I also had such a visualization of her sat on the carpet, like stroking the carpet, and the smell of a new carpet as well. Insane. Just that's
it does have such an impact. And like you just said about like the visual stuff, like, I have open rails for my clothes because I love seeing my clothes. Like, I love clothes. I mean, I'm pretty boring with it. Most of it is black, most of it's neutral. It's pretty, but like, seeing them, and it is all kind of like ordered, and it just makes me feel like I've got something in my life in order. But I'm the same in like all my drawers. I've got all the little cubes that have everything, like, and sometimes my space does get messy, and that is definitely a reflection of where my mental space is at. And I can accept that, and then I go, right, okay, you need I got a different uncle, came and stayed with me not long ago, and I did exactly the same thing, but for myself. So I had little niggly things that I'm just like, yeah, I'll get to that, or I didn't have a screwdriver for the right size, and just stupid stuff like that. Didn't have the right tools, and it's made such a difference. Like, and then I went through a bit of a like, right, I'm going to declutter and I'm going to get rid of loads of stuff, and it just, your space does have a massive impact. And
and I think what you hold on to has a massive impact too. Like, we've inherited quite a few bits from my husband's grandparents have recently passed, so we've inherited a few bits, and there's some bits that are really great to inherit.
Mhm.
And like, don't get me wrong, I have loved all of the plant pots and stuff. Like, yes, I will take all of them. And my husband's taken a few tools and like some other odds and sods, but you don't necessarily need everything.
Mm.
And not everything, there's certain things that hold like more sentimental value, but there's almost like that balance of like, you don't necessarily need to keep hold of it just because it was somebody else's.
Mm.
Like, does it bring you that joy? Does it bring you happiness? Then keep it.
Yeah.
Fine. But also, I don't know about you, but we moved into a 2-bed house from a 3-bed house that had a loft. And now we don't have a loft nor the 3rd bedroom. So, and so now probably we did it literally the other week. Maybe every 6 months we go through the house and we're like, right, charity shop, we've not used it. Go. Because you do collect stuff.
Yeah.
And people go, oh, this would be nice for you. And you're like, don't really know where I'm going to put that.
Yeah. And it has like a mental like weight or drain on you. Like, and you know, like right back to when I first got interested in interior design, it was because of like the impact that it can have on people's behavior and like the difference it can make. I do remember watching like DIY SOS as a kid and like thinking like, wow, like look at that, and they've designed it specifically for them, and like the impact it can have on people's lives if their house is ordered in a way or designed or just you know laid out in a way that works for them, and I just think we often like move into houses and it's just like, oh, just put everything here and we'll just live with it, and it just never gets kind of properly sorted. And I mean, you just watch things like Stacey Solomon's Sort Your Life Out now, and I mean that's my favourite programme. I love it.
Oh, me too. Oh, so much satisfaction when they lay everything out in colour order in the units.
And
like,
you think like, how on earth did all of that fit in that space, and the impact that that's had on those people's like lives for years. And you know, programs like that are just, I mean, not all of us can go and hire an aircraft whatever and lay everything out, you know. We can do it one drawer at a time.
Yeah. That program honestly is like my kryptonite. I'm like, I love it because she's so down to earth as well. And she's like, we can repaint stuff, we can redecorate stuff. And she's like reusing stuff and not making it elitist, which I think sometimes it can be, you know, like DIY SOS is great, but also it's that sense of like massive teams coming in and restructuring everything. And, you know, it's not far-fetched, but it is.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like somebody could do that themselves. Like, and not everybody wants to go on a TV program and have the state of their house aired. Like, you know.
Definitely. I've got one last question for you. What inspires you?
I would say anything that makes me feel a certain way. So right back to kind of like what I've said about space. So I get inspiration from so much, but it's generally because like I've felt a certain way somewhere, or I've like, you know, seen something. And I mean, obviously I love Pinterest, right? Like it's like, that is what I do on a night to relax. I'm not bothered about watching TV. I'll scroll Pinterest and I'll make mood boards. Like that's my jam. And I stop on things that just make me feel a certain way. So it could range from so much, but yeah, for me, it's just that like feeling that I get inside.
That's so nice. I think you're the first person to have answered with a feeling rather than a visual thing that inspires them. And I think you're so right about our spaces. They can really inspire you or really drag you down either, you know, and sometimes it's you don't have as much cash to redo a space, or you don't have as much time or even the skills or the tools to do it. I mean, I don't know, it's taken us, our kitchen has been fitted a year and our tiles have only just got done in the kitchen. And then you look at the room and we're like, whoa, this looks insane. And it's like, it's just the tiles, but we didn't have the necessary tools or skills to be able to do it until we were shown by somebody else. And I think, you know, that makes all the difference. And just a lick of paint somewhere can make a difference, or the ambience of the room and lighting. And yeah,
I moved a set of drawers from one side of the room in my bedroom to the other side yesterday, and it feels so different. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's satisfying. Like, so sometimes it is just a little reshuffle. And you know, I've started getting into like listening to a bit more about feng shui at the moment. Like, I'm not going to go necessarily down the route of becoming a feng shui consultant, but I like love a lot of the kind of underlying things around it, because it is around, you know, how things might make you feel. Or, you know, I know not everyone wants to go hiding certain things in objects because it's in the southwest of their home and things, but I think that, you know, there's sense in like not putting a mirror straight across from your front door, because it's gonna, the energy is just gonna go straight back out. Like, if that's what you want to believe in. Like, I had a mirror across from my door. I mean, I did move it now and again out of a certain room, but like, yeah, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. So, yeah, but you know, going on a walk in nature, like, I know lots of people can say like they get inspired by nature, but like for me, it's like the feeling that's conjured. There's a certain point of the canal that I walk on that I just feel like I'm like in this picturesque fairy tale thing. I take pictures of it all the time because it just looks different today, but like I just have a certain feeling in that like specific spot. And yeah.
And I think sometimes having the freedom to have that feeling come up as well, because sometimes I feel like we repress that sometimes and try and ignore our gut feelings and our other feelings that are going on when we're surrounded by certain spaces, because we're just trying to push through and try and be productive as possible. And actually like sitting with those feelings and being like, your spot in the canal that's, I can imagine, is different every day, because I've got a view that changes every day, and going like, oh, it makes me feel all nice today, or like, oh, I feel a bit refreshed from it, or you know, and that must be so nice.
And it's why people like going on holiday. You're going into a new environment that has no clutter, like it's really minimal and clean, and you know, and so it does reset you because you've been in a different environment. And
I think you're so right. You're so right there. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Hannah. I really enjoyed listening to your journey and hearing more about your sobriety journey and your Sober Butterfly Collective and what you're doing with the event space. It sounds so exciting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where your journey takes you.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, embracing the whole freelance, self-employed, kind of being a business owner life now, and you know, no one can make me redundant now.
No, that's it. They really can't. And do you know what? Being freelance, it's feast or famine, and you find this fight inside you and this passion, and I think you get this fire in your belly because you're like, I've got to make it work because I'm relying on me.
Absolutely. And I think when you find your thing that you're passionate about, like I was on a call earlier today and this guy was like, it's very hard when, you know, he's a trainer, talks to people all day, every day, probably doesn't get very much back, like, you know, on Zoom. And he was just like, you are so animated when you talk about what you do because you're just so passionate about it. I don't think I would have necessarily gone, well, I wouldn't have gone down this route if I'd not made the decision to stop drinking, you know, and it just lifted the lid and unlocked my potential for me. So,
yeah, it's just been so interesting to hear all your entire journey. Well, thank you so much, my love.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great to chat to you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!